cheese on the plate, electrified the plate. Every time he went to take the cheese, he would get shocked. This particular experiment explains a lot of the, for me, in my opinion, the response of young men in our society with respect to dating and marriage. They see the cheese, the prize on the plate, and every time they reach for it, every time they make an attempt to get it, there is some sort of thing that shocks them. Eventually, they do one of two things. They either give up trying to get the cheese, or no matter how hard and how difficult or how painful the process may be, they self sabotage once victory is in reach and withdraw away from it. This is a variation on Pavlovian um, experiments. That was positive reinforcement. But for many young men, dating is a negative exercise in negative reinforcement and social conditioning, where men have been burnt so much that they do not feel that the cheese will ever be in reach. They either get shocked because the plate is still electrified, and they go through pain and difficulties so great that they no longer have any interest in the cheese, or even if they manage to get to the cheese, they self sabotage and don't end up with anything to show for their efforts anyway. This is contributing in many ways to the downfall of Western civilization, since marriage is a significant and uh, exceptionally beneficial component to nuclear families and the raising and rearing of children in a society, such that many Western countries are now experiencing a declining birth rate because the men in that society have been conditioned by the societies in which they live to no longer pursue the cheese, or that they cannot get it no matter what obstacles they manage to overcome. Other countries then send their children to the Western world and begin a series of replacements to take over for those that are no longer reproducing. It's a sad commentary on the status of men and women in our society. So many men who manage to screw their courage to the sticking place and summon up the blood are so shocked by the responses of women, which are so poignantly personal and punitive, that they no longer have any desire to even draw near to the plate of cheese. And I know marriage is not a cheese, but this is simply a parallelism for what's going on here. Is with the rise of political and judicial mandates, with increasing likelihood of you being accused of doing something untoward and inappropriate, losing your job, your livelihood, and your freedom, with divorce rates skyrocketing, with men being ripped away from their children, and with men not even being acknowledged as men for purposes of dating, just as living wallets. What did you expect them to do? Now, in the cartoon series, Brain never gives up his trying to take over the world. That's the key word. We're going to try to take over the world. We're not going to take over the world. We're going to try to take over the world. And so there are men still going through the motions who are trying, who will not succeed, or who will not allow themselves to succeed because they don't know what to do if it happens. So many men that I know have never dated a woman who actually cared about them and would not know what to do if it happened. They would be in undiscovered country, and therefore possibly incapable, like Brain, of succeeding even in those rare instances in the series where his plan manages to come to fruition. There's one, for example, where he manages to send out a signal and brainwashes the entire world. This is at Christmas time through a toy. And instead of asking them to be his slaves and help him build the world, he tells them to have a Merry Christmas. And so even at that point where he reaches it, he still can't do it. What we need here is a different kind of social conditioning. We need circumstances under which the men, who are mice, the mice and men in our society, are willing to go after the cheese on the plate. Number one, because either we remove the constraints and the restrictions so that the cheese is reachable, and number two, or that we make the cheese desirable. With the risk of divorce and the likelihood of financial payments so high, there are so many men who believe that the juice is not worth the squeeze and don't even bother. We need to make marriage desirable again. We need to make marriage likely again. We need to make promises mean something again. And what we need to do is hold women accountable for making and breaking their oaths. You probably know someone who has made an oath, either before a magistrate, before Elvis at a casino, or before priests and messengers of God, who has then decided to break that because she was bored or she didn't feel satisfied. Forget for richer or for poorer, sickness and health, for better or for worse, as long as we both shall live. Marriages fall apart faster than sandcastles in a rising tide. And with the rising tide of evil in our world, it is more important than ever before to shore up our societies and cultures by ensconcing in them the likelihood for lasting, loving, and successful families. We need to encourage women to be the kind of women that men want to marry. We need to encourage men to pick only those women and pay attention to only those women. And we need to reward men and women who do virtuous things so that we can establish families. Right now, the reward is for women who decide to leave, who get extra cash and prizes if they manage to reproduce. This is backwards and will ultimately may not result in the collapse of the birth rate, but will ultimately result in the collapse of civil society. For what does a man have is to incentivize him to make risks if there is no legacy to leave behind? During quarantine, I spent a lot of time looking into the Tudor family. I understand a little bit better now Henry VIII's obsession with having a son. He did have other kids and had a legacy, so to speak, but there was a desire in that man that is not in the men of today to leave as his legacy a family name and posterity to replace him. Author Mark Levin once said, "A century from now, most people will not remember who you are or what you did. What you are really leaving behind is your family." We need a country, we need a society, we need a Western culture where men have a reason to want to take the risks and the likelihood that they will have posterity to survive them and for whom they can build a better world. Men who have nothing for which to build usually make no efforts beyond themselves and oftentimes make no efforts beyond only that which is necessary for their maintenance and sustenance, and with no provision whatsoever for the betterment of anyone around them, because when they are dead, there is an end, and there is nothing they do will live after them. But if you give a man a child that he gets to raise and love, he may have the desire to pour all that he has and is into that offspring, and that is how you preserve best your civilization. Mars may need moms, but Earth needs better fathers. And fathers need a reason to have and commit to offspring. If you have a better option, then you should propose that. But in the current climate, that is the single biggest risk to the maintenance and sustenance of Western culture and civilization. Godspeed. Good luck.